So, hello everybody, and welcome to another talk. Today's a little bit of an unusual one. I'm re-speaking to Ernst Wilhelm. I've asked Ernst to come back on and do another talk. The other previous talk was very successful, and a lot of people wrote to me and said how much they enjoyed it. And during that talk, we briefly touched upon Muhurta electing an auspicious time to undertake certain ventures. And I just thought it would be a really good thing to revisit that with Ernst and get some of his take on how he would sort of set out a Muhurta if he was doing one. And also the benefits of Kala is particularly good for doing that. And it's actually probably the page that I use more than anything else. I mean, I'm very interested in preparing remedies, and then I try to always look at the astrological angles as well and try and get the timing right. So for me, it's a kind of a really an important part of the software. So this is sort of slightly self-indulgent, this one, because I'm something I'm very interested in. I hope, or I'm sure other people will be interested in too. So I'll hand it over to you, Ernst. Do you want to maybe sort of give a little bit of it's a huge topic. I totally get that. And we're not going to get anywhere near finishing it in the time we've got, but perhaps in the time we've been given, you can sort of outline for people how you're personally using this, a little bit about the background, and of course, how it's integrated into the software.
Okay, sure. So I'll give a little talk about what Muhurta is. Muhurta means a moment, is what it literally means. So it's about finding that right moment. In Western astrology, they call it electional astrology. Okay. Now, in Western astrology, when they try to find, this time to start an event like getting married or getting a surgery or whatever, they basically use all the things they kind of know from natal astrology to find that moment. They're basically using aspects, conjunctions, planets and houses, and the zodiac. They're basically using what we would say zodiacal astrology. It's all based on this chart that you see in front of you and the planetary permutations. Okay. Now, the Muhurta system from Vedic astrology, from Hindu astrology, is very, very different. It essentially is based on time factors. So when you look at the chart, you don't see these things. You don't see the time factors. In astrology, there's many, many time factors, which means, for instance, there's the day of a week. That's a time factor. There is the phase of the moon. That's a time factor, what we call a tithi. There is the nakshatra the moon is in. There's what's called the karana the moon is in. There's the yoga that the moon is in. There's all these time parts. It's not just about the zodiacal stuff, the chart stuff that you see as the chart. It's about all these time factors. And the time factors are really the determinative factor. In the Surya Siddhanta, it says, time is the force that brings events to pass. So time is considered this force. And so with Muhurta, we start the process of finding the good moment by making sure the time is auspicious for something to happen. Not the chart auspicious, but the time. And if the time's once we get an auspicious time, then we make sure the chart is auspicious too. So if a person goes to a Western astrologer to get an electional chart done, the chart might look great, but the time factors could be really, really terrible, and the event won't work. In fact, when I was first starting to do Vedic astrology, I had a client who was having all these sales events. He traveled in the country sales events. He wanted me to tell him which ones to go to that would be most profitable. So I worked on this for a while. It allowed me to do a tremendous amount of research on Muhurta. And like every astrologer, I was paying most attention to the chart factors, which even most Vedic astrologers actually do, not aware of all the time factors, okay? But then I found out the defining thing, the most determinative thing that determined whether the show would be a success or not was something called the Vara Tithi Nakshatra Yoga. And that's the combination of the day of the week, the Tithi, which is the lunar phase, and the nakshatra, or the constellation the moon is in. Okay, the lunar mansion of the moon. And those combinations can indicate an auspicious force of time or an inauspicious force of time. And I was shocked to find that carried more weight than anything else.
Mm.
And this is something that in the Western world, they have no knowledge of even. So the electional astrology, what we call Muhurta from India, it's a very sophisticated system. Okay. Now, if we look here, this is my book on Muhurta. It's 384 pages. You can see this part here is all the time factors. Now, it's a lot of factors, but in this book, I've explained what each time factor does. Now, if I didn't have the explanations of the time factors, it would only be about, 30 pages of time factors. This is how you calculate this, but I explain what it all does. So it's bigger, but that's a lot of factors. Then this part of the book is the special factors for different events. So every event has some slightly different rules. If you're going to war, what's auspicious for going and killing people is different than what's auspicious for getting married, right? Obviously, unless you want to, you want to rule your spouse and, rule over them and oppress them, then yeah, go get it going to war Muhurta on your marriage, And sadly, people have accidentally chosen going to war, things that are auspicious for going to war when they get married, and vice versa. So it was considered a very, very important part of astrology in India. Okay, now they had two books. In South India, they use this book, Kalaprakasika. It's this big. This was the Muhurta book in South India. In North India, they use this book.
Yeah.
Okay.
Are they both available in English as well, or are they?
Yeah, they're both translated in English. This book has a lot more, it has the Sanskrit in it in a way that takes a lot more space. It's not that this book is really bigger than this book. It just also has all the Sanskrit in it. Okay.
Yeah.
So those books share a lot of common things, but then they have some things that they don't share. Okay. My book covers everything that's in those books essentially. Okay. With an explanation. So it's a powerful science. And it's because you not only have to deal with the chart, which has a lot of things going on, you have to deal with all these time factors. They're not even easy to see at a glance. You can't put the time factor in this chart. You have to look at the tables, calculate the time things. To find a good Muhurta becomes a huge process, actually. It's not a matter of 2 minutes. It's really could be a matter of 1 to 3 hours to find an auspicious moment if you just have your normal software. Okay. With Kala, we've been able to work it down that you can work it out much, much faster. Okay, because I programmed everything into our software in a very user-friendly way, and even a way that you can completely cheat and do it in 1 minute. Okay, so if you want to, so and it analyzes all the time factors, all that stuff's calculated, and I'll show everyone what that looks like in a moment. But what's interesting about Muhurta, every area of life that existed back in India, they have rules. When you shave, when you cut your hair, the first time your child eats, then the obvious ones when you get married, when you have surgery, okay? And then the ones that are not so obvious, but things like moving into a house, going on a journey, those things, going on a war, going on a business trip. These all things they would find a good moment to do. Now, it's really interesting. The ones that they put the most effort into, that if I open this book, just on one section, there'll be pages and pages of extra rules, are marriage. Because, so many things can go wrong in marriage. And when it does, boy, are you in trouble, right? So there's all these extra principles to look into for marriage. And then traveling. Traveling has so many extra principles. Now, because in the old days, if you were traveling and something went wrong, it could just go so wrong. Now you travel, something goes wrong, you get stuck on the runway for 2 hours, right? But you got a roof over your head, so it's a blizzard, and they're just serving you coffee. It's a good day, right? But in the old days, if you started journeying and get caught in a blizzard, there's a good chance you're going to die. You also had to deal with bandits, outlaws, native people who don't want you taking over their country, things like that. It was very, very dangerous. Kingdoms right next to each other, constantly squabbling against each other. Traveling was an extremely risky, dangerous affair. And so there's all these additional rules for traveling to really ensure that a person arrives where they want to in one piece, with the possessions they left with, and they can succeed in their goals. And then other things, they don't have a lot of extra principles because they're just not such a dangerous thing. But anything you can imagine is in here. When to take a medicine, when to get a surgery, when to conceive a child, when to cut a child's hair. There's all these times for every step of the child's development. When to begin studying something, like when you start studying astrology, you can find a good Muhurta for that. When you buy something, when you sell something, when you invest money, when you put money in the bank, everything you can imagine is covered in the science. And it's really something a person could specialize in. Now, with the software, we've made it so that any astrologer can do good Muhurtas without having to spend a couple years in full study, because it really is a completely separate branch of astrology. It really deserved completely separate study, where a person goes, I'm going to learn this fully. And everyone could learn it fully very quickly and easily with the software and do good Muhurtas. Because so much of it is presented in a way that you can really use it, okay? And what's interesting about it, it considers all these time factors that have been neglected in natal astrology and birth chart astrology. The fact is, all these time factors that we're using in Muhurta, they're affecting each person's birth. It's just that part has kind of been left behind. There are a few astrologers in India now who will read your chart based only on time factors, just using time factors. Chinese astrology is a system that focuses on time factors exclusively, okay? And so the name time is called Kala in Sanskrit. And that's why our software is called Kala, because Kala, time is the force that brings events to pass, okay? So...
Yeah, just before we get into that bit, I was going to ask you, so you showed the two example books, was it the Muhurta Chintamani and the...
Yeah, so the Kalaprakasika.
Yeah, so you were saying
Muhurta
one's like a North
Chintamani.
Indian tradition, one's a South Indian tradition. So
Yes.
what is the primary, where do they diverge? What's the difference between, what would the North be focusing on more and the South? Just out of curiosity.
Okay, yeah. So Muhurta Chintamani is the 17th century work from North India. It basically means everything your heart would desire in respect to Muhurta. Okay, Chintamani is to fill your heart. Okay, so Muhurta to fill your heart, essentially. Okay, and what it is some of the yoga, some of the combinations that make a day good or bad. This book has some that this doesn't, and vice versa.
Right. Then
this book might have a Muhurta for doing these types of events, and it might not be found in another book, and vice versa. Okay, it's not that one has anything that the other one doesn't really have. It's just they each have a few things in certain sections that's missing in the other.
Right.
Probably because those cultures didn't emphasize those things.
Okay.
Okay. The biggest difference, actually, and this book is 12th century. Or 1200s, I don't remember, Kalaprakasika. It's the older book. It's one of the older books we have on astrology. That's old. We like to think we have all these books from 3,000 years ago, but we have none from 3,000 years ago. A couple from 2,000 years ago, but most are really from the 1600s and newer. Okay. So this is a very old book. Now, it's interesting, where they actually differ the most is in relationship compatibility.
Right.
So the relationship compatibility in Vedic astrology is only found in the Muhurta books, because as part of finding the good time for the moment, for a marriage, you want to ensure that the couple is suited for marriage. So that's why they do it in these books, okay?
Is that kind of crossing over a little bit into like nakshatra as well? Because obviously there's a lot of compatibility.
Oh, so much nakshatra stuff in here.
Yeah.
In fact, you won't find nakshatra information in the natal astrology books. It's not in the natal astrology books. All the nakshatra information is in a few of the philosophical books, and most of it's in these two books, actually.
Okay.
Okay. This is where you get a lot of stuff on nakshatras. And of course, you get a lot of stuff on nakshatras when you study their relationship compatibility stuff, because that's 90% based on nakshatras. Okay. So the difference is, in this book, this author was the one who defined the relationship compatibility the way it's done in the modern world, which means there is 8 kutas. One of them has 8 points. One has 7, one has 6, one has 5, one has 4, one has 3, one has 2, one has 1. So the Muhurta, the 8 different factors, and they each get 1 to 8 points. Okay, that's the way everyone uses. They use these 8 factors, and then they will also maybe use Raju and Sri Dirgha and Veda. Okay, and that's it.
Okay.
And this book basically says tally up the points and that determines the compatibility. That's his idea of how it works. That is not an authoritative sanction, actually.
Right.
And people don't realize that. So the points we attribute to these compatibility measurements come from this book. They weren't used before this. Okay. Now in this book, he covers those same factors, but there's no points given. He also covers additional points. And in fact, the finest book for relationship compatibility is the South Indian book called Prajnamarga. So Prajnamarga is about Prajna, which is calculating the chart for when the question's asked or for when the person shows up. This is a very sophisticated book. It's longer. It's twice as big as both of these.
Yeah, I've got a copy of that somewhere.
That book is so sophisticated. The astrologers who learned that system, people didn't have their birth times. They would show up to an astrologer. Astrologer would cast a chart, and from that chart, predict when they're going to die, plus when they're going to get married. Just read their whole lives from the chart when they show up. So they very much developed this Prajna system. Then he also has things in respect to transits and Ashtaka Varga. And then this book also covers the compatibility. And this book is, gosh, I think this book might be 1100s or 11th century. It's also very old. It's older than this. And he has 3 times as many compatibility factors. The majority based on nakshatras again. No points are given to anything. There is no points. Points is a modern thing from the 1600s. Okay. And it works. The points have value. But I'm just saying it wasn't that the points were something that is ultimately the way it has to be done. Okay. What it is that there's different comparisons and they represent different things. Depending on what your goals in life are, different comparisons will be more important with different people, of course, for what you need in your life. And in the Prajnamarga, he talks about that. He tells which matchings are more important for different types of people. So it's a whole larger level of compatibility, just so people know. So the biggest difference in these 2 books is actually the compatibility. Then there's some things, this book, not complete things, but like I said, there'll be some yogas. This will have some yogas, not in here. This will have some yogas, not in here. But they don't really have something that's not found in the other book. Okay, pretty much. So they have very identical information, but together we're just broadening the spectrum of information, basically.
I was wondering also whether, I noticed, say, books like Satyajatakam, which is like a South Indian chart, they'll talk about the South Indian, and it's all more about the relationships between the planets and the signs, rather than the North Indian, which is sort of a more house-based system, and it's kind of more to do with houses. So I wondered whether the South and the North were just having a different interpretation system or looking at it slightly differently, but it's sounding like maybe not.
What happened is that Alexander the Great came into North India and brought the North Indian chart to North India, actually. That chart that we call North Indian was the chart that used to be used in Western astrology. I have a book, or had a book, but I have an image from the book of a chart that Kepler did for some duke. And this chart is North Indian. except the Lagna is not on top, it's on the left, like
Oh
they
no,
do in the
yeah.
round chart.
Mm,
But it's a North Indian chart. So this North Indian chart is a more house-based chart.
mm,
The South Indian chart, I think, is specific to a much older system of Vedic astrology.
mm,
South India has, in parts of South India have completely different systems of astrology.
mm.
I think that what's really interesting is the South India chart really aligns with Jaimini astrology. The funny thing is, most of the Jaimini manuals that have been discovered in North India. In fact, the best manuals were discovered in Nepal and Kathmandu. So that's very North India, you
Yeah,
know?
yeah, yeah.
It's a very Hindu world, Nepal. I mean, Nepal is more Hindu than Indian, you know, than India is. They're very Hindu there. But so I think all of India used to use a South Indian chart, but then the Greeks came in
Mm,
and really changed astrology in India, which is really, really interesting. Also, the palmistry they practice in India these days, palmistry kind of faded away largely in India. And then the English brought it back. And most people actually do Chiro palmistry
mm.
from 1800s India or 1800 UK, the same way the rest of the world does, you know?
Yeah.
So somehow the gypsies left, brought palmistry around, it came back through England, comes back into India. I've only found one palmistry book in India that's actually in Sanskrit. Everything else is based on English principles, and there
Mm,
are some differences. So it's really interesting how these things we think have been in India a certain way forever really haven't been. Yes, Muhurta, we see no signs of this in any other part of the world.
mm,
Jaimini astrology, no sign in other parts of the world.
mm.
Prajnamarga, no sign anywhere else in the world except South India, you
Mm.
know? So we really don't know what North India was doing, you know, before 300 BC, but we know they were doing different things than they started doing after Alexander the Great showed up and after the English showed up.
Mm. It's interesting.
Yeah.
When I got into it, I mean, my initial interest was doing like the birth charts. Of course, that's what we're all interested in when we start. However,
Mhm.
that sort of quickly waned, and I sort of got more into these other systems. I was interested in, just really made me appreciate astrology so much more with like the Prajna and I guess because that's reflected in a lot of the Ayurvedic texts. You know, they're talking about Prajna sometimes asking the questions or preparing remedies under a certain nakshatra. Well, it's tiny amounts of information, but it just
Yes.
kind of whetted my appetite. And I thought, actually, I'd like to know more about that. So that's why I've kind of gone for that more. Or it's been more interesting. So anyway, well
Yeah.
let's crack on with Carla, and then
Yeah.
you can
Okay.
show
Yeah.
us your wares.
And preparing remedies, making medicines was a huge important factor in ancient India.
Mm,
And they did muhurtas for all that stuff, planting crops, you name it. They found a good moment for it. I mean, the astrologers worked hard just finding times, you know. Okay, I'll show you
okay,
that. Yeah, so to show everyone how Muhurta actually works in practice and everything we're dealing with, I'll just show a chart here and we'll work out a Muhurta, okay?
okay,
Um, so anyway, this is Clint Eastwood's chart. We're going to use him because I had him open from last night. So to
okay.
do a Muhurta, we go to screens and then we go to Muhurta. This
Yep.
is where we get our Muhurta module. This has everything that's basically in these three books, okay?
Okay.
Somewhere in them. Now, to explain the screen, we have the normal natal chart, just like any other chart. Then down here, we have the 6 most important time factors. This is
Yep.
like a timetable, okay? And the things we have here, we have the days of the month along here. So this is October 2024, and these are the 1st of October through the 31st.
Yep.
Then we have the nakshatra, which is the lunar mansion that the moon is in. That's very important. Certain nakshatras give growth to certain things and not so much growth to other things. We want things to move forward, so we want the right nakshatra.
Yep.
Then we have the Tara. The Tara basically means star, and it's the constellation or the nakshatra that the moon is in from your natal moon. So some stars are auspicious, some from your natal moon, some stars are not, because they have to do with adversity and conflict.
Okay.
Then we have the Tithi, which is the lunar day. There's 30 lunar days in a month. Okay. And then we have the Karana, which is half the lunar day.
Yeah.
Some Karanas are good, some are problematical. Then we have what's called the Nitya Yoga, and that's the day yoga, the yoga of the day. And that's based on the sun and moon's longitudes added together, and that determines a nakshatra, and that nakshatra determines the yoga.
Okay.
And then we have Varatithi Nakshatra Yoga, which is a combination of the day of the week, which you can see up here, the nakshatra, and the tithi.
Yeah.
And that will create something auspicious or inauspicious. Okay. Now in the table, the green are auspicious, the reds are inauspicious, and the yellows are, it's 50-50. It's not good, it's not bad.
Yeah.
It's neutral. Okay. We only get neutrals in the Varatithi Nakshatra yogas. Because some yogas, sometimes you'll get a good yoga and a bad yoga, so it gets neutral.
Okay.
Okay. The reason that could happen, because you can have a combination of a day and a tithi that's good, but the combination of the day and the nakshatra is not good.
Okay.
Okay. So it can blend. Now, all these time factors are shown in this table, essentially. Okay. So the top row is what's called the ayana. The ayana is these are all the time factors. All this is time factors, okay?
Yeah.
The most important time factors in addition to these down here. So the ayana is whether it's the sun's moving north or the sun's moving south. That's an important factor, actually. Something most people don't consider. For many lifelong things, you want the sun moving north when you start it, which means you want to do those things during the first 6 months of the year, from December 21st to June 21st. And the rest of the year, you don't even want to do them. Yeah, half the people in the world do those things when the sun is moving south, okay? Very simple. Yeah. All right. Then we have the Ritu is the season, shows the season. Then we have the Masa, which is the month, the lunar month. And the Paksha, which is the waning moon or the waxing moon. Most things we want to do, if possible, in a waxing moon, but we can use a waning for if other conditions are okay.
Okay.
Then it tells the full moon of the month, the lord of the full moon, and then there's these things called Sunya Nakshatra, which means in every month, there's certain nakshatras that become Shunya, which means empty. So if in this month you do something when the moon's in Kritika, Mrigashira, Pushya, Magha, then it's not going to work out. That nakshatra can't deliver in this month. Okay? So it might be a good nakshatra normally, but in this month, that nakshatra is empty. It cannot produce results. So there's lots of these Shunya things. And there's also a Shunya Rashi. During this month, Libra is not a good Rashi.
Right.
Anything in Libra is not going to work out. So if your moon is there or your ascendant's there in Libra during this month, not going to work out real good. Okay? Then we have the Tithi. That's the lunar day. Some Tithis are good, some are bad. There's different types of Tithi. This is a Jaya Tithi, but it becomes, due to other factors, it becomes a Dwanda, which is a conflictual Tithi. It's a Tithi that's going to cause opposite ideas. Okay? So no, you wouldn't want to get married on this Tithi, right? This time. The Tithi has a Lord, and depending on the Tithi, we get Shunya Rashis, which are empty Rashis, that if your Lagna is in those Rashis, during this lunar day, it's empty. Things are not going to work out. So these are all these time factors. Then we have the Krana, whether it's good or bad, and its Lord. The Vara, which is the Lord of the day, in this case, Jupiter. Then we have the Yoga, when it's the name of this yoga is Shubha, which translates into auspicious, good yoga. Then we have the Yogi point, which is the degree of that yoga and the Lord of that yoga. And again, we have the lords of everything because as we study the chart, we want to make sure the lords of these things are in good shape. Okay, so say you do something during Jupiter's day, but Jupiter is in bad shape. Well, then that day is not really so great. Okay, so the lords, always have to look at the lords. Then we have the nakshatra, it's Pushya. Now this nakshatra is struck down because of where it's located from Saturn. So there's all these factors that can make something good or bad. So if you do something during a struck down nakshatra, something's not going to work out, right? Okay. Then we have the Avashta. And the Avashta is basically a lunar calculation that kind of represents, we can say, the ceiling. It kind of, things are, this is the general condition. So the general condition of this is kampa, which is trembling. So you wouldn't want to go to get a surgery during a trembling condition, would you? Either you're going to be like, oh, I don't want to go, or maybe even worse, the surgeon's having a bad day and got the shakes, you know? You know, you don't, there's certain, you know, you don't want a shaking, you know? Now, if you want to blow up another country, well, this might be a really good time to use a trembling condition because you're going to shake that earth, you know, when you drop your bombs. So there's always the condition, the avashta of the Muhurta. Then there's the Muhurta itself. Muhurta is not only the moment, 1/30th of a day is a Muhurta, okay? And so this is 24 Chandra, the moon, that's auspicious. And that relates to the Mrigashira nakshatra. So these, I'm just not expecting everyone to understand these things. I'm just kind of telling you, these are the new things to learn, okay? Then we have the Hora, which is the hour lord, 24 hours every day. And we have the Nadika, which is 1/60th of the day. And that's considered very important. In fact, Nadikas aren't found in these books. They're not found in these Muhurta books.
Right.
The Nadikas come from a myth where, let's see, Indra went to Jupiter, who's the wise Brahmin astrologer, and Indra is the lord of the gods. And he said, will you tell me when I should plant my new forest? And Jupiter says, yes, let me work out a good astrological moment for planting your new forest. So he plants the new forest, and a few years later, the whole forest burns down. And Indra gets very upset, and he goes to Jupiter. You said this was a good astrological moment. Why did my whole forest burn down? And Jupiter said, with all the bad things that can happen in the world, it's no surprise your forest burned down. You know? So then Indra went to Venus, who's really considered the wisest astrologer. And he said to Venus, why did my forest burn down? And he said, oh, because you planted your forest in the fire Nadika, and that's why your forest burned down. So the Nadika is basically gives like this final outcome. It's considered to be very important according to this myth. So I programmed it into the software, and it's very effective. It's 1/60th of a day.
Right.
So you want to make sure you have a good Nadika as well. Okay. The Vela is the ceiling. It's like the ceiling of the event. So it basically, if you have a low ceiling, you can't do much. If you have a high ceiling, it's spacious, lots of room, right?
Right.
So it's a bad word. That means the ceiling doesn't give you the space to really maximize the potential. Okay. So a good ceiling lets you maximize the ceiling. The ceiling is like how high you can get, basically.
And just would Vela be one of the three gunas? So you're either going to be like tamasic, rajas, or sattvic?
Yeah, it's always rajas, sattva, or tamas.
Okay.
And so depending on what your goal is, so if you do something rajasic, like say you want to start an entertainment company.
Yep.
And you do it in a different Vela, it won't reach its full potential.
Right. Okay.
Okay, basically. Then there's the Upagraha. That's a 1/8 part of the day.
Yep.
It's also used in natal astrology. Like you've heard of Gulika, that's an Upagraha too. So there's these different shadowy planets. They're basically time points that are associated with that. The Panchaka is this fivefold, this numerical thing you do to come up with a number that gives a result.
Yeah.
It's very popular in India. A lot of astrologers use it exclusively.
Yeah.
Honestly, I never found it carrying much weight.
Okay.
So I sort of ignore Panchaka in favor of everything else. I just haven't found it to be really important. Then the Tara, it gives the name of the Tara, which is
Yeah.
over here.
Yeah.
It's Sampat, which means wealth. So it's a good Tara, lets you acquire things, hold on to things, have things that are lasting. And then we have the name of the Bharatitya Nakshatra Yoga. Like right now on October 25th, we have Visha Poison Yoga, Nasa Loss and Mrityu Death Yoga. So no, we do not want Clint Eastwood to get a surgery right now because he's gonna not recover well. He may die in surgery, and his toxic load will be so high from the surgery residue it'll take him forever to recover. Okay.
If we were to like a remedy that, let's say we were purifying a poison, which they quite often do in Ayurveda, that could be auspicious for something like that though? Let's say we were purifying snake venom or something.
No, you wouldn't want to do anything to build a person's health through one of these bad yogas. Okay. For something like that, you would actually might want to use a bad tithi though.
Right.
So for lots of times for surgeries and stuff, a bad tithi is the best tithi because they have a destructive nature and you're trying to destroy something. But you're thinking homeopathically, I'm going to kill poison with poison. But the Bharatitya Nakshatra Yoga is more the outcome.
Okay.
More than the process. Right. Where the tithi has a lot to do with the process that's happening. So it's a different idea. Okay. But yeah, you having a poison process could be how you cure the poison. So if you get bit by a rattlesnake, you have to give the person a poison antidote to cure their bite, right?
Yeah.
Now with homeopathy, we're treating a person with a poison in a minute form that would cause the same disease. But that's not the outcome, that's the process.
Right.
And since the Bharatitya Nakshatra Yoga is the outcome, we wouldn't want to do that. In fact, some of the yogas are, like there's one called Dri Pushkara Yoga, and basically it means whatever you do it twice. So if you get married under that, you're going to marry again. Whatever it is you do, this is my final time I'm going to do this. No, it's not. You're going to end up doing it all over again. And there's one that does it 3 times over. So it's the result you get.
Could you negate that? Could you negate that by having 2 marriage ceremonies kind of back to back?
You could try. But I've known people who've married the same woman 3 times.
Wow.
And unfortunately, I did not have their marriage dates or any of that, but it would have been really interesting research. They also got divorced 3 times. So it wasn't like they just renewed their vows. Okay. And then we have a table up here, and then you can pull up any auxiliary charts you might want to look at. In Muhurta, the only Varga that's commonly used is the Navamsha. Okay. So that explains the screen a little bit. Oh, and here we have buttons. One of the headaches of doing a Muhurta is say the Muhurta, right now it's Bhagya, it's good. But let's say we had a bad Muhurta. Okay, say we had Ajapada, which is the goat-footed. This is considered a negative Muhurta because it does nothing good for worldly affairs, okay? So let's say this Muhurta was bad. And say you wanted to find out when a good Muhurta was, and you had to change the time, add a minute to find the good Muhurta. It could take forever. So with these buttons here, you can go 1 Muhurta up with a click of the button or 1 Muhurta down. Same for everything. For the Lagna, 1 Lagna up or 1 Lagna down. 1 Nakshatra up or 1 Nakshatra down. So say the Nakshatra is Lisha. Not a good Nakshatra usually for most events. I can click up, I can go to the next one, Mag. Okay, now I can start looking fresh. So it lets you quickly go to the next one of any of these time factors. That saves a tremendous amount of time in trying to find a good date.
Yeah.
So to start with, let's say we got Clint here, and he, finally needs some medicine at 90 some years old. He needs some medicine. So we can go to medical treatment of disease and taking medicine.
Okay.
Now, if we've done our Muhurta studies, we've studied all this. and we know what everything in this table means, plus other things that are in the chart, and we know what the blemishes are, and we know what the things are that overcome blemishes. In Muhurta, there's what's called 21 Maha doshas, or 21 great blemishes. One of those is the moon with any planet. A lot of people don't know that. A lot of people think, oh, I'll put moon with Jupiter, that'll make everything good. Not in Muhurta. In your birth chart, yeah, it's nice, but not in Muhurta. So there's 21 blemishes, major blemishes, and there's also certain factors that help overcome them. So those are things you just have to learn in the book. Kala does it for you too. All right. Now, once we know the basics, for every category, there's special rules. So then we click on the Muhurta guidelines. Treatment of disease. These are all the guidelines for treatment of disease. And a person can read through that, and that helps them get more focused on this event exactly. Treatment of disease has about 2 pages of extra rules. That's not a lot. But let's say we go to, travel. Oops. Okay. Yeah. Go to travel. And travel, every direction's different. So say I want to go east. And I'll look how many rules I have that are additional to travel. It's absolutely
That's enormous, isn't it?
Isn't that crazy? So, I mean, a person could specialize in traveling Muhurta. That's how crazy it is. And every direction has its own, some things are different,
Oh.
So we're just going to let Clint travel recklessly, but we will be concerned about his medicine, okay?
Okay.
Because travel Muhurtas
I
are a
think
lot of work.
you'd said before as well, because I've heard people. I think you did a previous video on this, and some of the people were saying, "Well, I'm asking you this question, but you don't seem to have anything in there that's covered." But you said, "Look, there is a certain amount of guides that are given, and something will always relate to something else. So you have to look beyond the sphere of. It's not just
Exactly.
that. There's a broader spectrum of connections."
Exactly. Like a lot of people say, well, that the category doesn't exist. It's like, well, pick something that's similar. Because in the modern world, we have categories that the ancients didn't have. They didn't have certain things. We do things that they didn't do, and vice versa. Okay. So it's good to kind of read through these basic guidelines to have an idea of that special event that you're doing. Okay. Now, and then you have to go here and you have to think about it. Okay. I need to figure out when Clint should have medicine. It's October 25th. He can't get until next month, so I'm going to go to November. What I can do real quick, I can just scan down these rows and see if I can find a row where I get all green on one day. Can't find it. There's no days that have a green all the way down. See that?
Yeah.
So right away, I know there's no perfect days based on the most important time factors all month long. Okay, so I need to find what's the least damaging. Well, here, look at this. The nakshatra is average. Everything else is green. All right, so this day has a lot of potential based on the time. So I could just click on that day.
Yep.
And I can say, okay, does this day have promise? Well, I can check the other factors, but right away I can see the moon is with Jupiter. And like I said, you always want the moon to be alone if possible. That's a blemish. Okay. Now, I might be able to find things in the chart to make it better, that'll overcome that blemish, but so I'll keep that in mind to come back to.
Okay.
Now, what I can do, I can maybe go to the 6th. I got a bad nakshatra, but everything else is good. And the yoga, the Vara Tithi Nakshatra yoga, is Sutta, caused by the Vara, Tithi, and the nakshatra. So even though the nakshatra is bad, the fact that it forms a good yoga means I can actually use this nakshatra. It treats it like a yellow nakshatra now. So I can use Wednesday the 6th. Okay, the moon is alone. Wonderful. Okay. I got a conjunction, good conjunction of Mercury and Venus. I've got no bad conjunctions. This day has promise. Okay. And then I can go through and I can say, okay, I want to find a good logna. Do I want, Jupiter in the 8th? Not ideally. Do I want two malefics on angles? No. You want benefics and angles? Malefics in 3, 6, and 11? Benefics and angles and trines. So I don't like this logna. Now from Sagittarius, I got 1, 2, 3 planets and angles that are benefic. And I have Saturn, a malefic and an angle. All right, Moon in second is a nice place. So this has more promise, okay? And then I can check the other lognas and kind of see what I like. Like, do I want this? No. Mars in eighth? No. Never use Mars in eighth. Mars in eighth breaks things, destroys things. So you take a medicine with Mars in eighth, you're going to have side effects and be more ill. It's going to hurt your longevity. Here I've got a malefic on an angle and Sun. Two malefics and angles, don't like it.
Just for completeness, would it be possible to put up a in one of your empty boxes there, say where you've got the 24th divisional, could you maybe put a North Indian chart in there?
Okay. And I'll change this to South for South Indian people.
Yeah.
Because, yeah, now that we're looking at houses, North Indian chart works better.
Yeah.
So, yeah, so we can quickly see we got 3 planets on angles, 1 planet here. That has some promise too, okay? I don't like Saturn in the Lagna, not a great thing, but the Lagna Lord's on an angle. That's a big saving grace to the chart. The Sun or Moon, the 11th, is a saving grace to the chart. So I have some good things here. And so I like this time a lot. And then I can look through all these charts and analyze all that and spend 1 to 3 hours finding the exact time, okay?
Yeah.
Or less than that. Within an hour, I can have the best day this month. All right. Another option actually worked just as good as me slaving away. So I like this Muhurta. It has 10 points over here, see?
Okay.
But I didn't look at these points. I just looked at the Muhurta, and based on my knowledge, I quickly, in 5 minutes, found a Muhurta that the software says is worth 10 points.
Okay.
Okay? 10 points is a lot. So let's try something now. I only spent, you saw how many time I spent. Now, I wouldn't call Clint and say, do this. I would spend more time checking more times this day. I would spend more time this month. I would spend at least half hour on it, okay?
Yeah.
But just as a test, let's just see what happens. I can go to Muhurta Helper. I can go put the dates in. November 1, 2024 through November 30th, 2024. And I will go between 8 a.m. and 5 p.m. when the doctors are open.
Yeah.
And I'll click OK. Now, Kala is basically going and checking 124 factors every second for this month. Every second, it's calculated 124 factors. So it's going to take a while. That's a lot of calculations.
Yeah.
Some of these calculations are very complicated. And it's going to find all the good moments during this month. And look at this.
Wow.
November 6th, 2024, 10 points, one of the highest times, right? November 6th, a little later in the day, also 10 points. The rest of the month, all right, there's a 14 point on the 7th.
Yeah.
A 10 point on the 11th, on the 16th, a 12 point on the 16th. I didn't even look at those days. And the 16th looks really good too. But there's not much difference between 10 and 12. It's all very good. Kala will show anything over 0 points. I like to get 4 points or more. Sometimes you can't find 4 points or more though. And you have to do something that's just 0 or better. But 10 points is high. The fact that I picked 10 points in 5 minutes, wonderful.
That's amazing, yeah.
Now, if I had worked longer, I might have came up with November 7th. What's the difference in November 7th? Where do I get those extra 4 points, you know? It's in something very subtle. See how the chart hardly changes? From there, to here. That's November 6th with 10 points. And over here is November 7th with 4 points. It's hardly any different, okay? It's in one of the small factors. We could check here. We can click on scoring details, and it shows you every factor that's giving the points, okay?
Right.
But if I had just stopped at 5 minutes and given him this Muhurta for 10 points, everything would have worked out fine for Clint.
Yeah.
But see, I didn't even have to spend that 5 minutes. All I had to do was spend 30 seconds waiting for Kala to process the data. That's how accurate the Kala is. And then I would have said, Clint, November 6th at 10:11 to 10:25 is one option. November 6th at 13:49 to 14:12 is another option. And then I'd say November 7th from 13:45 to 14:06 as an option. And if you want to wait, November 16th from from 8:25 to 8:30, or November 16th from 9:18 to 9:46. Any of those, you'll have success. Pick the one that works most conveniently for you.
Yeah.
And when I did it with my knowledge of everything in this book, I found one of these dates in 3 minutes. So you can really trust the automated Muhurta here. It works really, really well. We spent a tremendous amount of time in calculating this out and working out all the factors and numbers. When I was in India, I worked for a software company that was building a Muhurta software, an exclusive Muhurta software. And my friend who worked there, he was the one programming it all. So after he programmed everything, that the company owner told him to program, he asked me to assign points to things. And I assigned points to things. And the points that I assigned caused it to give Muhurtas that the astrologers in India were picking. It confirmed the Muhurtas they were picking. Okay? It only had maybe half of what's in Kala, maybe half. Because the person who told this programmer to put these factors hadn't studied Muhurta fully. Okay? But it still did a good job. It was correlating to what the astrologers were picking. Then, before they released the software, they took the values for every factor to a famous astrologer in India, and he reassigned the value to all of them. And when I was getting married, they had just released the software. My friend said, oh, I worked out some Muhurtas with the software we just finished. At this time, I wasn't working for the company anymore. And he gave me the Muhurta results. All of them were severely blemished. I mean, actually bad, like moon conjunct a planet. I mean, they gave me a Muhurta with the moon-Mars conjunction, And I was like shocked because they changed the evaluation, okay? But with the Kala, if you want to see what's going on, if you go to options, you go to Muhurta helper, these are all the values attributed to different things, okay? And you can change these. So say based on your experience, you want to change a value to a factor, you can.
Right.
Okay.
So what you're saying is that if you had a good Venus in the chart and you thought, I'm going to assign a greater value to that one feature of the chart, you can manually override it.
Yeah, say it just allows the user to make the final decision on the values. I don't recommend a person touch the values that I put in unless they've really studied and have a lot of experience, because the values I've created have worked out very well in practice. In fact, when I do a Muhurta for myself, I just let Kala do it. And then I just click on it and I give the final thumbs up based on my knowledge. But I don't spend a half an hour going through everything manually and pushing these buttons. I search the good days and then I double check them because I know Kala is not going to miss any good possible days. And I just want to verify which of those days I actually personally like the most with my own brain. But I know Kala is not going to not pick a day that would be good that I might find. If I find it, I know Kala is going to find it too. And then I can just pick between the 5 days it finds, I can pick my favorite rather than spending hours finding those 5 days myself. You understand?
Yeah.
So the manual, the automated features work really, really well. And on our website, vaultoftheheavens.com, you can just go get a Muhurta and it'll give you a year's worth of days for any event. And a lot of events you can use the same event for. So you can get a business event, and you can use that for anything business, even if it's not specifically that type of business event. We have two ways that people can benefit from that.
How much weight would you give the Navamsha in this? Do you factor that in, or is it's just there of interest? You would give it a cursory glance.
The Navamsha is not the most important thing. How the Navamsha is important. For instance, if the Lord of the Navamsha Lagna is in an angle or the 11th, it's going to give a benefit. It's a blemish reducer.
Right.
So you see, here Cancer is the Navamsha. Its Lord Moon is in the 11th in the Rashi chart.
Yeah.
That's probably why this day gets 14 points. And the day on the 6th, let's go to the 6th. And we had this Lagna over here. Okay. We had 10 points. Actually, at this time, we're still getting that thing. But let's say we're still getting those points for the moon. But let's say we change the Lagna into Navamsha. Well, then the Rashi changes too. Now we got minus 27 points, one Navamsha later.
Just that one adjustment. Yeah.
Just that one, because now we got Saturn the 12th, a big blemish. We don't have any benefics on angles. That's where most of those points came from. We have a malefic in the 8th. We have Rahu and 2 malefics on angles. The Lord of the Navamsha Lagna, Mars, is not in an angle, or the 11th. So we just lost a lot of points, and we picked up some bad things. We got Ahi, Serpent, Muhurta now. The Varatithi Nakshatra Yoga turned to burnt, bad one, and Shubha, auspicious. It went to yellow now instead of green. So we lost 37 points in 13 minutes.
It's amazing.
Everything changed. That's a dramatic change.
There's so many factors to look at. I mean, it's obviously, I've learned a lot listening to you do this, because I've kind of built up a technique I've used, and I found it reasonably effective. I'm pleased with it, but I'm always looking to improve what I know and do it better. So it's been really interesting to hear how you've approach this, and just looking at all these factors is amazing. I think what I like about this setup is I love the traffic light system. That's very simple. You can very quickly see, you can select your date. Once you've got your actual date, then you could start looking for a window within that day where you might get advantageous moments. And I must admit, I was probably factoring in the Navamsha a little bit more than perhaps I maybe should give it credit for. But interesting to look at, even down to the your table in the center there, individual. I do glance down that, but I must admit, I don't use it to anything like the degree you've been talking about. So that's been really great for me to see that as well, just a sort of extra considerations. I think I just, like everybody, you see all this data and it's a bit overwhelming.
It's a lot. It's a huge study, Muhurta, but we've made it so anyone can do it in 1 minute and be useful. And if you actually study Muhurta, you can spend another 4 minutes overlooking what the software gives you and making the final judgment yourself. But it's really, really a powerful tool. This part of the Skala was a huge part of development and research. I spent a tremendous amount of time studying and researching Muhurta, writing this book. And it's really, no one else has specialized in research in Muhurta like I have in this day and age. Other astrologers I've met who've done Muhurtas, they're very superficial, very, very basic. Why? Because without this module, working out Muhurtas, you only can juggle so much before you go crazy,
Yeah.
And most of those things, other softwares don't even calculate.
Yeah, and I really like that you can save. Obviously, if you save this out now, this will get saved along with the chart that your base chart, doesn't it? So if we go,
you can save the Muhurta. You can save the Muhurta right here. So you could say Clint Med.
Yeah.
You could save the Muhurta right there and pull it up for future reference.
So if we save it out, we save Clint's chart out. When we open it up again, if we go back into the Muhurta window, we can just automatically go back to that specific Muhurta related.
Yeah, you'll have to go back. You'll have to go to open.
Yeah.
And open that Muhurta.
Yeah, that's a really useful feature.
Yeah, that way you can save all the Muhurtas you did for someone, and that's handy because sometimes people will forget. When did you tell me to do that? And now
you want to start looking for it.
Yeah, or looking for that email or remembering what you said, you could just pull it up. But it's a very powerful tool, and it makes it so that any astrologer, even someone who hasn't specialized or even read a Muhurta book, can still provide better Muhurtas than most astrologers are going to give.
Mm.
I've been shocked at most of the Muhurtas. There's some people were doing Muhurtas for an event they were having every year, okay? And they were reputable astrologers. And when they got my book, they said, gosh, I didn't know the moon had to be alone. We always made sure that we had a moon conjunct one of these planets to make sure the convention was good. I'm like, well, now you know.
Wow.
So there's a lot of principles that has simply aren't part of natal astrology that are different than natal astrology.
Mm.
When you see a Jupiter moon conjunction in a person's chart, you're like, oh, I want to be this person's friend, right?
Yeah.
But when you see the moon with a planet in Muhurta, you don't want it. See, what happens is any planet with the moon unbalances the Muhurta. So when you have Jupiter with the moon, you have too much Jupiter. All right, well, too much Jupiter is better than too much any other planet.
Mm.
So if moon's with Mercury or Jupiter, you can kind of accept it, but it's still best not to have.
Mm.
But with any other planet, you absolutely want to avoid it. Especially Saturn and Mars, of course, and even Venus, you want to avoid. You don't want too much of that planet unbalancing the event, creating expectations that can never be fulfilled.
I mean, having gone through all this now, realistically, how much work do you think your average astrologer would have done back in India 1,000 years ago? How much of this do you think would have been considered? Or do you think it would be down to the place and the time and the school and the teacher? And do you know what I mean?
I think that those guys, everything in these books was in their head.
Right. Okay.
I
Amazing.
mean, the way those guys learned back then, they would literally remember everything in the book. They could sit down and quote this book to you.
Yeah.
Like they have these movies where they had the genius he says, oh, you think you're smart? He's like, grab any book on your bookshelf, open it to any page, and he starts reading the page. He tells Tom what's on the page, right? They have those TV shows.
Yeah.
Well, these guys could actually do that when it came to what they studied. They had special ways they developed to memorize complete books.
Yeah.
And Sanskrit was written with a rhythm to it that would allow easy memorization.
Mm.
Okay. There was principles like meter. Sanskrit's written in meters, kind of like Shakespeare, to assist in the memorization of things.
Wow.
And so they had this stuff so deeply embedded in their consciousness that when they looked at a chart, they were instantly aware of so many things. But that took years and years of skill and practice and development and dedication and extremely hard work.
Mm.
These days, we don't use our brains to that ability. We're not as developed intellectually, we can say, We're in a different age. We're dealing with different things, and we only have so much time to spend on remembering something,
Yeah.
So we get to use our auxiliary brains, aka a hard drive and a software, Because of computers, we're actually able to advance astrology more than ever we have before because we can test things. At the same time, there's things that astrologers regularly use that just don't work very well.
Mm.
For instance, this Panchaka thing. Oh, this is one of the go-to Muhurtas that all astrologers use.
Right.
I haven't found it. I never look at it because I don't find it working.
Mm.
I don't even use it as one of the factors. So there's a lot of principles in astrology, Vedic astrology, that everyone thinks is correct, has thought is correct for for centuries. They really don't work that well. With computers, we can quickly test things. We can test an abundance of things that what would have taken a year to test, we can test in a week with a computer.
Mm.
And now with AI available, we'll be able to test what we could have tested in a year with computers in an hour with the computer.
Mm.
And one of the ways we're taking Kala in the future is we want to add AI functionality to provide research and testing. So the grunt work of the testing, we want to use AI to do the grunt work.
Mm.
because it's the grunt work that takes the time, manually examining all these things.
So yeah, I mean that's really really amazing. It was great to. I think it was just really good to see it on screen and actually watch you kind of working and just see what you're doing. I just gives people a sense of what it's capable of. It's not a lesson in Muhurta. So if people really want to get into this and they're really interested in developing their Muhurta skills, Ernst is actually you've got, I think you've got a whole course dedicated to this.
Yeah, I have a course based on the book. Basically covers everything in the book. The book itself is all you need. I only have it in PDF now. I have to sort some things out and get it back in print and hard copy. It hasn't been in hard copy in probably 15 years. It's one of those things I'm way behind on getting complete. One of the main reasons for that, when I wrote the book back in 2004, I was still using sidereal zodiac signs.
Right.
As many people know, in 2007, I went to tropical zodiac signs. So I kind of want to rewrite some of the examples and stuff in here with tropical signs. And it turns out I might have used the wrong time for the launching of the Titanic. I need to research that and figure that out.
Okay.
And, the Muhurta for when I thought it launched, or the time I had, was a bad Muhurta, obviously. But so I need to look at the true Muhurta. So there's a few blemishes I need to fix in the book before I can get it reprinted. So I just haven't had time to get done with that.
Actually quite an easy read. It wasn't as bad as I thought it was going to be. It was structured very well. It goes through, it kind of builds, so you get a sense of each part before you move on to the next, and it kind of introduces.
Exactly.
Then of course you've got your information section at the end where these are all the different criterias. But yeah, I found it a really helpful book, so I'd highly recommend people take a look at that. And of course, get Kala. Then you can actually play to your heart's content with a Muhurta.
Or if you just want one, just go to the vaultoftheheavens.com and you can order one up. But yeah, in the book, my goal is to explain all the factors so you can understand the relevant importance of everything. Instead of just having a list of all these factors, like what does any of this mean? If we know what every factor is doing, what every factor means, now we can manage it, because all the factors are not going to be good. It's impossible. There's always a lot of bad things. But if we understand what everything means, we can decide which ones we're just going to not care about as much. And really, even with all these factors, it's not that hard. The basic rule is get a good Bharatitha Nakshatra yoga, get as many of those green boxes lit up as you can, get benefics and angles, or the sun or moon in the 11th. Try to get the Navamsha Lagna Lord in an angle or trine or the 11th. Try to get a good Lagna. So planets in dignity in the Lagna, or the Lagna Lord in dignity. Make sure the moon's alone. Venus not in 6th, Mars not in 8th. And then, if you can do those things, you're going to have a good Muhurta. And those are the main primary things. If you get those, there'll be something there that's going to work out okay. It might not be the best, but those are the things that help overcome a lot of the problems. There's more problems. You can't memorize all the problems. There's so many, right? Not us modern men. The old guys could, not us. We can't do it. But we don't have to. We have to memorize the things that save the chart. I just mentioned all the main things that save a chart. That's not hard to remember. So if you can get a lot of those things, even if there's a ton of bad shit in there that you don't even know is there, it's going to overcome them. But you can do it very simply like that. But then you might not pick the 10-point Muhurta. You might just end up with a 4-point Muhurta. So, but the software does it all. It does the whole 9 yards.
Yeah, I was thinking of it a bit like going on a trip. It's like trying to think what you might need when you go and get all the right things in the bag before you leave. And then you get there and realize you left your razor behind. It's just it's one of those things. It's like, you're going to get something.
At the end of the day, if you go on the trip, if you just make sure your wallet is fat with cash.
Yeah, that's the priority.
It doesn't matter what you forgot. You're going to be fine, right?
Yeah. I guess that's kind of like the moon thing, isn't it? If the moon's in great shape in the chart, maybe that could overcome a lot of blemishes.
Exactly. That's like having a fat wallet and everything going wrong.
I like that. Yeah, I like that. Great. Well, listen, let's wrap it up, and thank you very much for your time. It was really great. I'll get this out, and people can take a look at it. I hope it really helps people understand more about Muhurta.
Okay, great. Thanks, and nice to spend time with you again.
Brilliant. Thank you again. Appreciate your time.
Bye-bye.